Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving straight into a force that silently drives almost everything we do. We're going to neutrally unpack the evolutionary, the psychological, and the sociological roots of why we as human beings are so incredibly driven to climb the social ladder.
Picture this. I'm sure you know the feeling. You finally get that promotion you've been grinding away at for years. You upgrade to the nicer car. You move into the better neighborhood. And for a fleeting, magical moment, you feel like you've completely made it. You are on top of the world. But then, well, someone else in your social circle gets something just a little bit better.
And suddenly, your achievement just doesn't feel quite as impressive anymore. The glow totally wears off, and it forces us to ask this incredibly frustrating question about human ambition. Why does the finish line keep moving on us? Why is it that the absolute second we reach our goal, our brains immediately start scanning for the next rung on the ladder?
Section 1. What is status, and what is the psychology behind the climb? To actually answer that question objectively, we need to look at what status is without judging it as some shallow character flaw, because it's not. Status encompasses a lot more than just showing off your new shoes. It's about social rank, recognition, belonging, reputation, and signaling. It is a completely natural, biological mechanism. Status provides us with vital social information, it gives us the motivation to improve, it secures our sense of belonging, and it grants us access to crucial opportunities. It's not a bug in human software, folks. It's a core feature.
Section 2. The evolutionary ladder. Survival of the most recognized.
Author Robert Greene provides a really compelling interpretation of this status sensitivity, and he actually traces it all the way back to our earliest ancestors. Greene makes the philosophical observation that we continually rank ourselves and measure our self-worth through our status. He notes that this intense compulsion to compare our ego to others, that isn't some modern invention cooked up by social media algorithms. It is practically wired into our DNA. As social animals, deeply understanding where we fit into the hierarchy was a literal survival trait in early hunter-gatherer groups.
And this philosophical take is powerfully backed up by empirical research. Decision strategist Annie Duke analyzes the reality of how we benchmark our success against our peers.
Duke points out that comparing our results to others isn't you being petty, it's an embedded drive in our animal brains. Our genes are fundamentally competitive. Engaging the world through the lens of competition is literally what kept our species from going extinct. So when you feel that weird, uncomfortable pang of envy because a coworker got a raise, that's just your ancient survival wiring kicking in, screaming at you not to fall behind the pack.
Section 3. Wealth versus appearance. The cost of signaling.
So, if this evolutionary drive to compete is baked into our DNA, how does it play out in our modern consumer culture, where our basic survival is, for the most part, guaranteed? Let's look at some brilliant insights from Scott Galloway, who breaks down the fundamental difference between actual economic security and the act of social signaling.
Galloway makes this crucial distinction between achieving true wealth and merely keeping up appearances. On the left side, we have wealth. That is economic security and the glorious stress-free absence of financial anxiety. It's freedom. On the right, we have appearance. This is spending heavily just to signal your resources to other people, which is driven by that evolutionary obligation to attract a mate and prove your standing. The problem is, way too often, people completely sacrifice the peace of mind of true wealth just to afford the expensive signals of appearance.
Author T. Harv Eker adds another layer to this economic reality by pointing out a really dangerous, almost inevitable trap. We call it lifestyle creep.
When we chase status purely through spending, we step onto what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. If you look at how this works, no matter how much our income goes up, and no matter how much our spending climbs to match it, our baseline happiness remains exactly the same. You buy the nicer clothes, the better car, the bigger house, but your brain just totally normalizes the new luxury. You're running faster and faster, sweating on this treadmill, but your baseline happiness isn't moving an inch.
Section 4. The art of reputation. Navigating society. But hey, status isn't exclusively about financial wealth or material goods. It is deeply tied to our reputation and our social intelligence. To really grasp this, we can look way back to the 17th century. The philosopher Baltasar Gracián made these timeless observations about human judgment that are honestly just as accurate today as they were hundreds of years ago.
Gracián argued that building a well-founded reputation requires immense mastery over yourself. He called it an indispensable art for navigating the world. Think about it. Material status symbols can be bought instantly with a credit card, but true reputation is incredibly expensive to obtain. It requires consistent integrity, emotional control, and social grace over a long period of time. But once you have it, it becomes this powerful, lasting, unshakable form of status.
Section 5. The expanding ladder. Why enough is elusive.
Whether we are chasing wealth, reputation, or career success, we always seem to find ourselves on a ladder that expands infinitely in both directions. Researcher Brené Brown's work helps us figure out exactly why this infinite ladder is so utterly exhausting, especially in our hyper-connected modern culture.
Brown highlights this crushing paradox. On one hand, we feel an intense, primal pressure to fit in with our group, but simultaneously, we feel we absolutely must stand out to be valued. When we spend enormous amounts of our daily energy comparing ourselves to the people directly ahead of us, or looking back and worrying about the people behind us, it becomes mathematically impossible to define what enough actually means. The ladder literally just keeps growing, making comparison the absolute thief of happiness.
Section 6. 5 ways to think about status more intelligently, stepping off the treadmill.
So how do we actually manage these totally natural, evolutionary, status-seeking behaviors in a healthy, productive way? By synthesizing the historical wisdom of Gracián, the observations of Greene, and all this modern behavioral data, we can distill it down to 5 actionable steps to redefine success before society dictates it for you. First, know whose opinion actually matters. Shrink your comparison group. Second, deliberately separate building true wealth from just trying to appear wealthy. Third, measure your progress against your own internal values, not external scoreboards. Fourth, build deep, genuine competence rather than merely signaling it. And finally, number 5, you have to define exactly what enough means to you.
Because at the end of the day, economic security and happiness aren't just a function of what you earn, it's about knowing where you're actually going. If you spend your entire life relentlessly climbing a ladder, you need to make absolutely sure it's leaning against a wall you genuinely want to reach. You don't want to exhaust yourself trying to outpace everyone around you, only to finally reach the top and realize your ladder was leaning against the completely wrong building all along.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative question to spark your own thinking about the invisible ladders we are all climbing every single day. What is one status symbol people chase that you personally just don't understand? Think about it, because recognizing the absurdity of someone else's ladder might just be the very first step to finally stepping off your own. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.